Joining us online is Megyn Kelly. She is, of course, host of The Megyn Kelly Show, which is on Sirius XM Triumph Channel 111 every weekday, noon Eastern Time. She can also be found at youtube.com/Megyn Kelly, wherever else you get your podcast. Megyn, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
So obviously, pretty dark day for the Republic. The actual case here was non-existent. I mean, it was kind of a turducken of a charge in the sense that it was a misdemeanor that was wrapped around a supposed felony that was wrapped around another claim. It was almost like three separate claims. And the charging documents had something I've never seen before, which is the judge literally saying to the jury that if 4 of you agree on the underlying felony, and 4 more of you agree on a separate underlying felony, and 4 more of you agree on a third underlying felony, that we can aggregate that all together and say that you all agree on the underlying felony that would allow for the charging of a state misdemeanor charge as a state felony, even though we are well outside the statute of limitations. Have you ever seen anything remotely like this?
No. I heard somebody say it's like a Russian nesting doll of crimes. And that's exactly right. Like, just keep going until you find the little one on the inside. And the whole thing was a fraud from the beginning, Ben, because what really Alvin Bragg was trying to do was bring a federal case as a state prosecutor. And he's not allowed to do that. He doesn't have jurisdiction to enforce federal election law, which is the exclusive jurisdiction of the feds, of the Federal Election Commission here, which did investigate this after it broke in 2018 that they'd done this whole catch and kill scheme with AMI and Michael Cohen, and said, this is not a problem legally. Wait, this is an electoral issue. You guys can decide whether you like this or don't like this, but it doesn't break any laws. And he decided to backdoor it. If he had just said the underlying felony is federal election law, that's what I'm basing this whole case on, he wouldn't have had jurisdiction to bring this. And I mean, this judge has pretended that that's not the case. This judge has pretended all along that you don't actually have to show a violation of the underlying crime. You just have to show an intent to violate it. So basically what happened was the collusion happened between the DA and the judge to make this as easy for Alvin Bragg as humanly possible, letting him skirt jurisdictional rules, legal rules, and pretend that there's a felony when there's not one. No one involved in this case apparently understands federal election law, which we do, because literally we've had Brad Smith on. We've been discussing it hour after hour on our show for the better part of a year. And it was completely misspelled out in the jury instructions. And the judge led this jury to the fountain of guilt. And I blame him and I blame Alvin Bragg. And I don't really blame the jury because they had no choice given what they were given here.
And Megyn, obviously you had this sort of hotly fought contest with Dan Abrams last night talking about the federal election law issues. And obviously I'm in agreement with you. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about when he suggests that what is essentially a payment for an NDA, which happens literally all the time, in a wide variety of contexts, by the way, everything from employment law to payoffs like this, or just settlements. I mean, this is just like a normal thing that happens in the legal world all the time. The suggestion that that is, by any stretch of the imagination, a violation of federal election law because it happened close to an election, as Bradley Smith has himself said, that would be equivalent to arguing that if I had an outstanding lawsuit against me and I wanted to settle that before the election because I just didn't want it hanging over me for the election, that would amount to a federal campaign contribution by me, leaving aside the fact that there are no contribution limits by Trump himself because the candidate can donate as much money to his own campaign as he wants, even if it were to be considered a federal election campaign donation.
That's exactly right. So if you run for office, you cannot settle any cases against you. Once you declare, you're just exposed. And you must, according to this jury verdict, and now Dan Abrams, you must let the public see all of your dirty laundry. Sorry, but if you try to cover any of it up like a normal human or businessman, or in Trump's case back in 2016, man with the number one show on television, you have to be publicly embarrassed, no matter what kind of cretin crawls out of the walls to try to disparage you. That's absurd. And, you know, Brad Smith has been pointing out all along, he was federal election chair under Clinton. Okay, he was appointed by Bill Clinton as the head of the chairman of the FEC. And he has been pointing out all along what you look at to determine whether this is a campaign contribution or could be categorized as one, which is what they assumed in this case, is whether you look at the nature of the payment, not the subjective belief of the defendant. It doesn't matter whether Trump did this to advance his campaign, whether that was the goal of Cohen, Pecker, and Trump. All that matters is the nature of a hush money payment. Is it the kind of thing that could only ever be used to advance a campaign, or might it have a more broad purpose and is used outside of the electoral context? The answer is clearly the latter. The things that fall within the former lane are things like rally fees and get out the vote efforts, polling to see how a candidate is doing. Those, yes, would be legitimate campaign finance items that you could get in trouble for if they exceeded the limits. But that's not this case. Hush money payments Alexander Hamilton got in trouble for a hush money payment. So they've been happening since the beginning of time. Only in this case are we pretending it's somehow unlawful.
We'll get to more on this in a moment. First, if you're struggling with collections, medical bills, credit cards, or personal loans, you need to go check out PDS Debt. PDS Debt is an innovative one-stop shop to guide you on your journey to freedom from debt. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to becoming debt-free. That's why PDS Debt offers multiple programs and solutions tailored to your specific needs, budget, and future financial goals. Whether you're going through a serious hardship or you just can't seem to keep up with the high interest on your credit cards, PDS Debt will craft a custom solution to give you instant relief and start saving you money. If you're making payments every month on your debt and your balances aren't going down, this program is for you. PDS Debt provides options that consolidate your debt into one low monthly payment. Anyone with 10 grand or more in eligible debt qualifies. There's no minimum credit score required. They want to help anybody with good and bad credit. Not only does PDS Debt have an A+ rating on the Better Business Bureau, but you'll save thousands in interest and fees and pay off your debt in a fraction of the time. Right now, PDS Debt is offering my listeners a free debt analysis. It only takes 30 seconds. Head on over to pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. Get your free debt assessment today. That's pdsdebt.com/Shapiro today. pdsdebt.com/Shapiro. So, Megyn, the other issue where you're seeing a lot of people complain about the right-wing take on this particular case, or even the independent claim on this particular case, is Donald Trump goes out there and he says, and I've said, and I think you've said as well, that in the absence of Biden being in the White House, it is unlikely that this happens. That the reality is that the Democratic Party has decided that they are going to litigate Donald Trump's candidacy to death. And what happened here is pretty obviously a put-up job that involved the Biden White House. They say, well, show us the evidence. I mean, there is some evidence to that effect in the sense that a Manhattan prosecutor who is one of the people heading up this particular case was literally a political consultant for the DNC in 2018 and was working at the DOJ until 5 seconds ago. And then he joined this particular office about 3 months before the charging documents were brought down. But again, the reality is that if Joe Biden had put out the message, hey guys, we're running an election here, we don't want to see this sort of thing happen. Is there any chance that Alvin Bragg would have brought this case?
Well, I guess there's some chance because he wanted to get elected himself. I mean, he had dual purpose in pursuing this. He wanted to get elected as DA and he wanted to make sure Trump didn't get elected as president. But I don't believe that there was no coordination with the White House because look what we saw in the Fani Willis case when she was publicly disgraced with her extramarital affair with Nathan Wade while she was actually prosecuting the case against Trump. We saw that they coordinated with the White House. That we saw it in his bills. They've been coordinating with the White House. We know from Politico's reporting that Merrick Garland has been feeling the full force of the White House in the Jack Smith cases, that Biden himself has been expressing displeasure at how long it took him, Jack Smith, to bring those two federal prosecutions and has been tapping the watch, tick-tock, right? Because he knows if Trump wins, those two cases go away. So what are the odds that there's been coordination and interaction on those three, but not the fourth with Alvin Bragg in New York? But even if there wasn't exact coordination, I don't care. He didn't need exact coordination. And the DA of Manhattan has an obligation, irrespective of his political motivations, not to pursue political prosecutions. He has an obligation to pursue justice. That's it. Not even convictions, just to pursue justice. And instead of doing that, he campaigned on a promise to get Trump. And the biggest thing, the best thing you can say about Alvin Bragg today is that he lived up to his campaign promise. Boy, did he ever.
So, Megyn, looking at what happens next, the July 11th date, which is 4 days before the Republican convention, which is when the sentencing hearing is supposed to actually happen. What do you think are the odds that the judge, in this case, Merchan, who obviously wanted Trump convicted, what do you think are the odds that he actually sentences him to jail time? Because the conventional wisdom right now is no way. He'll probably give him probation or he'll give him some sort of house arrest or something like that. I don't know. I feel like if you go this far to get this conviction, I feel like he's going to go all the way.
Oh, that's a dark thought. I mean, that's seriously dark. I I don't think he's going to give him jail time. It would be such an egregious deviation from what would normally be done in a case like this that I don't think he thinks he can get away with that. It's just, a first-time felon. It's ridiculous to even say that word about Trump, but okay, let's go with it. First-time felon with no prior record. And what would be the aggravating circumstances? What the left is pointing to is, well, he violated the gag order. The gag order is unconstitutional. The gag order will not be upheld when that gets appealed. That cannot be the basis for increasing Trump's sentencing on this unconstitutional substantive crime. Everything around this, he wasn't afforded due process at a federal level under our federal constitution, nor under the New York State Constitution, which doesn't allow you to just say, we incorporate by reference all criminal laws. And if what he did was to cover up some vague violation of one of those, he's guilty of a felony. So there's been multiple constitutional violations here, including that gag order, that cannot possibly be the basis of a sentence enhancement. And I just don't think Judge Merchan is going to have the stones to go quite that far. But he has disappointed me and surprised me many times along the way. So I guess I'm open-minded to that extreme possibility.
Yeah, here's my bet. My bet is that what he's actually going to use as the excuse is Donald Trump's lack of remorse, because this is the catch-22 that they've now set up, right? Is that he's going to go in for his probation interview. And of course, the minute he shows remorse for a crime that he didn't commit, that becomes the issue of the campaign. He admits that he did the crime. He's showing remorse for doing the crime. So he can't do that, nor would he, because we have all seen Trump. He shows that is the thing he is least likely to do of all human things, is to show remorse for anything he has ever done. So that's not going to happen. I could see Merchan dragging him into court and basically saying, you showed no remorse for this crime. You've shown no remorse this whole time. And so now I'm going to give you a jail sentence. My basis for saying that is Judge Arthur Engoron, who hit Trump with a $500 million judgment on the basis of absolute crap, meaning that if you're a New York judge and you want to be famous for the rest of your life, be the guy who put Donald Trump in jail.
Yes, it's absurd. It's like you're not allowed to maintain your innocence, or in the context of Engoron, your non-liable nature in the face of a ridiculous trumped-up charge. It's like, well, we found a jury that we pushed into this guilty verdict, we, the judge and the prosecutor. And now that they've done what we've told them to do, you have to say we were right all along. You are not entitled to maintain the position that this was an erroneous verdict and that you are not guilty of this crime. And what's amazing is, even though Trump made a strategic mistake by disputing some of the items in this case that he didn't need to dispute, he should have said, let's put to the side whether I had an interlude with Stormy Daniels. It's irrelevant. I think he could have gotten a stipulation. Mr. Trump denies that he had an interlude with Stormy Daniels, but for the purposes of this trial, we are going to proceed as though he did, okay? As though he did. And then we wouldn't have had to have Stormy Daniels on the stand. And he also shouldn't have contested anything about reimbursing Michael Cohen for the NDA. There was nothing wrong with anything Trump did. He didn't do one thing wrong. He shouldn't have led the jury to think this is an issue. We've got him, because there was a lot of evidence that he did reimburse him. He had tweeted that out himself. So it's kind of leading them to believe he might have done. Anyway, he shouldn't have done any of that. He should have owned all of this. But now they've put him in a position where if he denies any of it, they get to continue punishing him. And for what? Because he said from the beginning, all of this is made up and I didn't violate the law. So I don't know. I maintain this judge is not going to have the stones to actually go that far. But Ben, can we talk about what probation looks like for Donald Trump? Because that's absolutely outrageous. We could have the sitting president of the United States having to sit and check in with his probation officer. He's not supposed to be associating with known felons once he's a convicted felon. So what? Like Navarro, he's out. He can't talk to Trump anymore. Steve Bannon can't talk to Trump anymore, or he's got to answer to some, community college, city college guy who's trying to enforce the laws against the sitting president of the United States, who's going to tisk him and slap his knuckles. Travel could be restricted. They're actually talking about Trump possibly doing rallies from his home on home arrest, if that's what this judge sentences him to. This part of me wants to see it. I'm going to be honest, like the home arrest or the actual jail time. Part of me wants to see it because it'll guarantee his win. Every single Republican in America, every single one, the voting participation will break records on the GOP side, maybe even enough to overcome the doubtful independents. But honestly, it can't happen. It's too big a violation of our norms.
I totally agree with you. obviously, I've never seen Republicans united like this since maybe the Brett Kavanaugh trial. And this is even higher levels than that. So if you're a hesitant Republican or somebody who's sort of on the fence, don't really like Trump, people are going to walk over broken glass to vote for him now because this is so obviously trumped up. It's so obviously ridiculous. They made a massive strategic error by going after him on these charges and the dates of the calendar, this coming out first. What a huge blunder. It is going to benefit Trump. I really believe that going forward. Megyn, thanks so much for the time. Thanks for your analysis.
Thanks for having me. See you soon.
Are you tired of the lies and the twists of the mainstream media talking points? Yeah, me too. Join me in my newest series, Fact, where I dismantle and bring truth to this tiring mainstream agenda.